Welcome back to another episode of the Breakneck Podcast. I'm Matt Pashensky here with Ian Sweeney, and today we are discussing Anthropic's ongoing massacre of the entire software industry. Now they're going after Figma, Canva, all of these design SaaS applications with Claude Design. Ian, you used it in depth. You were an adept at these other tools. Tell me what's up with Claude Design. Is it going to kill every other software?
Way to go, understating things here. Absolute massacre. I'm beginning increasingly to think about Anthropic as Microsoft Office Suite for the AI era. They are building this stack of really interesting applications, code at the software level, Claude Design at the visual design level, co-work at sort of the general documentation level. And so the pattern's pretty similar. These things come out and honestly, they're pretty crap. At least when we look at it through an AI application layer, we expect to be wowed. But let's talk specifically about design. It is the immature younger sibling of code and co-work, which have progressed. Co-work being the most recent one has progressed really well. Code obviously has been around for a bit longer. So what the heck does Claude Design actually do? That's actually a great question. Or the better question is, who's it actually for? So I think I'm going to cast you and I quite similarly here. We are maybe I should just talk for myself. I don't have a lot of taste when it comes to UI design. I'm not the guy to come to if you want gorgeous, exquisite visual design.
I've never had a knock on my door saying, Matt, we just need to punch this design up a little bit. We need it to really pop. That was never a thing people came to me for.
The majority of us are like you and I, Matt. We have situations where we need visual design and we need to manifest something, and we can kind of plant some seeds, and we want somebody else or something else to do the work. At the other end of the extreme, you have proficient experts. We've spoken to quite a few of them, Jeff Berezny being one, who are aficionados in this space. They speak the language. They have design systems around it. I think what Claude Design is trying to do is kind of hit up both of them. So if you're a Figma user, I think it's trying to help you out. If you're a Canva user, which I am sometimes, it's trying to help you out. It doesn't do either particularly well.
That was my impression of Claude Design, is that I'm like, this doesn't feel like it's for me, really. It's like, hey, input your design system, and it's like, no, I just want it to look better than what I've been getting from Claude. And that didn't really seem like what it was. Where I've had a lot more success on, for instance, hey, I need to make a slide deck that looks really professional, is using Notebook LM, where you basically just give it a bunch of material, and maybe you give it a prototype doc and say, hey, take this PDF and turn it into something. There's a lot of downsides to Notebook LM because it's not very deterministic. It's just you kind of like throw something at it and something pops out. But then you're like, no, I just want to make one change. And then you're like really into it. You have to go load it into some other program. And so I always use like very plain white backgrounds so that I can just put squares of a text, and I try to guess it. Yeah, that's basically like Calibri. That's like Arial. But not a great experience considering what it should be able to do, which is like, no, just make this for me and I should be able to edit it and all that stuff. Which maybe we can use that as a segue to the other big thing that happened yesterday, which is immediately after Claude Design came out, we had OpenAI released ChatGPT Images 2, aka ImageGen 2, aka 4 other names that they used in there. So they're not great at naming yet or having consistency, but it's a substantial improvement over the previous status quo. The images look pretty similar to like the best in breed from Nano Banana, for instance. But where I think it excelled, and I haven't really gotten to the full extent of what it can do yet, is a lot of that determinism. I can say, I want it to say this, I want it to say this, I want this to be here. And it was much better in my brief, I spent a few minutes with it last night before, in preparation for all, informing all of our viewers. And it's really good. So you can see the state of the art moving towards what I want from Notebook LM, which is I just want it to say these things in these places, but you don't really get that. It looks great, but it's a little bit weird. It's not quite what you want, and then it's very hard to alter. Versus what I got from Images 2 was pretty incredible in terms of being
Yeah.
pretty deterministic and also looking great like Nano Banana.
Let's look at some real examples.
And if you're listening to us on an audio format,
Yeah,
I'll
you're just going to have to.
quietly describe each of the images as they pop up on the screen.
Yeah. So let me manipulate some stuff
Yeah, I
here.
won't show it, but the first one I made is like a guide to native plants of the Austin, Texas area that might go in your garden. Now, Claire has been doing quite a bit of gardening, so I am very up to date on these. It was great. Gave like the
That's good.
genus, gave kind of what they're good for, great pictures. They were all accurate. I mean, there's a couple I didn't know, but I was like, the ones I do know, it's great. So
There you go. There's nothing better with these tools than use them in a real life scenario. I have a need right now. I've been thinking about it for the last couple of weeks. We need to rebuild our website. I thought, okay, let me go to this new tool and see what we can do. All right. So let me show you kind of what's going on here on Claude Design. It started off with a bunch of questions about design and taste. And spoiler alert, I have no taste. It didn't create any taste for me. It didn't really help me sort of do anything that was visually differentiated, I felt. But what it did do is, and I'm not going to go through all the conversation on the left-hand side of the screen, but for those listening, there's a bunch of questions. It asked me the types of questions that your typical designer would have asked me, which was great. It tried to extract what I felt differentiated us and kind of look and feel and whatever, but it didn't give me any ideas around that, which was sadly a bit disappointing because that's what I was looking for. But so I'm just going to scroll here, through here. So for those of you not watching, we've got a pretty bright, light website. I gave it some of our strategy, which it captured. I wanted to visually pop, which it did. So it's kind of cool, but honestly, a website nowadays is pretty structured, right? We kind of know the different pieces that you want in there. It did go out, and for example, I told it, hey, we do the Breakneck Podcast. That's part of what we want to talk about here. So went out, did a little bit of research on that, didn't get it quite right, but it's not a bad, first take on a website. If I was paying for this in the old school world, if I had hired somebody to do this, I'd be like, yeah, that's okay, but I just paid you 10K, I want 8K back, because it's just not there. And it hasn't really pushed me or forced me to, or confronted me with tough questions to actually come up with something different and unique.
yeah,
So
that's my problem. I spent a lot of time, and again, you can get similar types of results 6 months ago from Claude. This is not. I think it's mostly in how there's a interface. It's a specific design focused tool. This feels a lot like Cowork to me, which is, yeah, I was already doing this. Like Cowork for me, it was kind of like, well, this is just Claude Code with a different interface. And really, I don't think Claude Cowork has caught on. This Claude Code is continued to grow as the backbone. And similarly, I feel here that I've been using this kind of design methodology with Claude and making websites with it for months. And yeah, I get basically the same thing out. So I feel like, did I just not figure something? Did I not know what I was supposed to do? And it's like, it's an AI thing. It should do something different. And
yeah,
yeah, my
it-
main problem with these websites that it creates is that they all feel pretty much the same.
yeah, it's good with the blank canvas problem. And I heard somebody else say, it gets you 80% of there, but leaves the remaining 20%. I think it's slightly different. It assumes you are ready to rock and roll and you're like 10, 20% into the thought process. It fits in the middle part, the middle 80%, and then the last 10% where the real magic is in creating this type of stuff, it is missing. So that said, I had a blank canvas. So it's pretty good in that regard to fit in that missing 80%. So we'll drop a link in. This website is live. I was like, yeah, okay, we'll use it. It's great. It's better than the blank canvas. So ixfoundry.co, we'll drop that in the show notes. It is in there. Okay, so let's talk about ChatGPT's new ImageGen stuff. And let me just lay out, for those who haven't listened to our earlier episodes on image generation, It's part of the bigger conversation about multimodal interactions. We haven't talked too much actually about voice, but I know you and I are huge users of voice interactions now. The missing probably piece of the puzzle is visual communication. And so when I think about image generation, like AI art's cool and everything, it's interesting, it's fun to look at, and memes and all that are cool. But really, the way I think about the value of imagery is another form of communication, right? Image in 1,000 words and all of that type of stuff. But it's a really powerful way of communicating information to us. And so it needs to be fairly precise. Let's say you're mapping a process out for a business and you're articulating a business outcome you want. A visual representation is a great way to do that. And I've done some stuff in the probably 9 months ago where we were doing that, and we were using something called a mermaid flow diagram to articulate like a real intricate flow, kind of a process engineering type of a thing. I don't know if you tried this at all, but I'd love to actually test ImageGen to do that. But that didn't occur to me when I was beginning to test. I tried a couple of other things. I suppose the point here is that generating the image is fantastic. It's generally not going to be right. So manipulation of that image is really important. Once we get that right, I think we're going to open the aperture, so to speak, on some really, really powerful mechanisms of communication. So I did try and have a little bit of fun though. So let me share what I tried with it. The first thing I said is create an image of a very natural looking woman sitting in a cafe with friends. She is drunk from her coffee cup. The coffee was too hot. I kind of crafted that fairly carefully in the sense of I wasn't too explicit. I kind of alluded to various things. And for those of you not watching, Matt, do you want to describe the image you see that it generated?
It is a very naturalistic woman sitting in a coffee shop who has drunk from her coffee and is too hot. So she's saying, ooh,
Yeah.
it's exactly what you described, Ian.
Yeah. It's what we would as humans expect. This typically, you've had to be more precise and more specific to get there. So great, good first start. Now let's start manipulating it. So I said, change the coffee cup to a bowl of soup she's drinking with a spoon. What are we giving that edited image, Matt, out of 100?
It's not great because you wouldn't hold a bowl like that. And this is one of the things that I find very troubling about this image gen in terms of just manipulating, is it tends to try to do an edit, like a quick edit from the last image. And so you kind of get this hangover where the first one looks super natural because it was kind of generated in a very certain way. And then the next one, it's almost like a cutout with one thing changed, which is exactly what you want if you're changing text. But in this case, no one holds a bowl like that.
Yeah. And so what has changed in the last probably 6 months, certainly between the OpenAI versions of image generation, is you used to have to be quite specific and mask areas, meaning identify areas of the image, not through your description, but actually through pixels, and say, replace this with that. So it's not a bad progression. We started getting into advanced mode. So the next image is not one generated. This is one I just took a photo from the TV. And it is, I guess it's a guy doing a TED Talk type of a presentation, and there's some slides on half the screen as well. What I was attempting to do, and I didn't describe very well, was, hey, take the guy from that photo I've taken and put him into the image of drinking the soup. So what I said is change the woman, it should say to, but it says FO, to being the man from the file I uploaded. So it's kind of a little bit interesting and not quite right. I got a pretty cool image back, which is funny. It did it the wrong way around.
Yeah, you've turned the man into the woman.
But a couple of interesting things. Again, a little bit hard to imagine if you're not seeing this. But the text, there's about 7 or 8 lines of text. It's kind of a slide. That from the photograph that I gave it, it replicated that, I think, perfectly. And then it took the woman's face and put her in the man's clothes and gave her long hair and made her older. So it wasn't what I was trying to do. It did a good job. What I was trying to do is take this older gentleman on a stage and put him in the cafe. So we had another go at that. No, I meant to replace the woman in the cafe with the man. The man should still be drinking the soup. Okay, Matt, what do we think of that one?
He looks a bit effeminate. I'm still worried that you have like a situation like the movie The Fly, where the fly flies into the teleporter and then a guy becomes a fly.
Yeah.
It does seem to kind of index to the last image. It's not a whole kind of rethinking. It's a iterative process where each previous iteration leaves its mark on the next. It's not like a full, this is the best I could do. It's kind of like it
Yeah.
feels like a series of nudges.
Yeah. And to be fair, we've given one image of this guy, sort of a side profile view. So a little bit of fun. Why is this important? It's because until we get that manipulation and derivatives of these photos to a point that we're happy with them and we can reliably make those edits, we're not going to be able to use these images at any real scale that I think are of value, or at least not open new surfaces and new places, spaces for us to use imagery in a powerful way to communicate.
Yeah, I'm going to use this as an opportunity to bring in a concept, which is in physics we call it ergodicity, and it's essentially like, can a system navigate the entire phase space or the full range of states that it should be able to occupy mechanically, or is it stuck in a subset? So if you think about a gas, for instance, a gas will occupy every part of a room versus a liquid, might stay in a little puddle, only on one side. So you could say that the gas is going to go sample the whole room. Like any particular molecule of gas can go anywhere in the room. And when I'm using these types of models, what it really feels like is that there's this huge space of images that I could create. And your first image, it feels like incredible because you're definitely in a part of that giant state space that you've never been to before, and it's very exciting. And then you try to kind of like, there's somewhere nearby you want to go, and you realize how kind of hard it is to get there. It's almost like what the LLMs is capable of doing with short amounts of prompts is kind of aligned to this very particular manifold, a very small subset of all of those things. So instead of it, gas going in the whole room, it feels like it's kind of maybe a spider web of network where it's like you can go close by, but you can never really get what you want without a tremendous amount of effort, and in some cases, never at all. And, there's a lot of prompting techniques that'll kind of break out of those main, but if you just ask to, show a person or show a this or show a that, you'll very quickly realize that it's going to give you almost the same base model almost every time. And the people all look alike, the images look alike. And there's a lot of work that you have to do to even break out of that very simple space, let alone get the exact image you want still.
Yeah, the way, if I compare it to the LLMs, where certainly it's gotten better in the last year, but when you have a conversation, it goes a little bit off track and it does something. And that interaction is very much like when you have a conversation with a human and you say something and they go off in a different direction. Then you go, oh, yeah, I could see how you would go that direction. What I really meant was, but there's a very natural, organic sort of meandering of the conversation forward in a way that if it goes off, you as a human can almost see why you've had this, Ian and Matt are chatting and Matt misinterprets me. I can interrogate what I said and realize, oh yeah, I could see how he would have gone that way. So his inference went right instead of left. The LLMs, I think the real improvement over the last time is you can have these long ongoing conversations now because of exactly that. It's much more natural. You look back and you go, oh yeah, I wasn't really kind of precise enough. If I'd been talking to a human, they would have made the same mistake. That is not where we're at with these images, right? So our meandering through that state space can be, you can go off orthogonally, right? Rather than kind of together and off a couple of degrees. Now, I would say it's a little bit better.
The impression you get from playing with these tools, and again, they're massively useful. I want to create an infographic. I want to create a sample interface. I want to prototype something in 2 minutes. I want to communicate a complex topic. I used to spend hours just drawing little circles and then connecting them with dots. Like a lot of my diagrams are just circles connected with little legs or whatever. And all that stuff can be done almost instantly. It's incredibly powerful, like presenting really complex topics to your team, getting feedback from customers. So useful. But at the same time, you kind of in the back of your head, you have this insecurity of am I still going to have a job in 6 months? And there's always that in the back of my head when I'm playing with these tools, you're not so great. There's still things that you can't do. And again, it feels like navigating this huge space, but without really any coherent idea of where you want to go built in, right? It doesn't really snap and like reveal something to you in the way that you, when you're working with a talented colleague, they're going to bring you something. You say, "That's exactly it. You really nailed it. We vibed. We clicked," and it just feels very hard to click with any of these tools. It always feels you kind of have to drag them back to something that feels like it should be obvious.
Yeah, yeah, and that's exactly it. I mean, that's the roadblock before we're going to use these at any type of scale. When that does open up, I think it's going to be amazing. Honestly, I think we're just this idea of being able to communicate an idea precisely with an image is going to be fantastic. Once we can do it at scale, we don't trust it enough. Neither you and I don't think, are going to be embedding this into any of our products in the
No.
near
And
near
that's
term
another
where
thing
it's a
is it
reliable
really
step.
doesn't feel like it's ready to be done in any kind of automated way. Now, I will say that everything I just said about images, I don't feel the same way about code, right? Like, and I'm not as good of a coder, but I'm not great at generating images either. So, um, it really gets code. It does physics pretty well too. Like if I give it a
Yeah,
physics problem, it kind of it gets, this is what you mean.
yeah,
This is the right way to do it. But there's so much literature and there's so much code out there to train on. And so, how do you diagonalize a matrix or how do you,
yeah,
draw a force diagram? Like, there's 10,000 problem sets that it's probably ingested with exactly that. Or how do I write a front end? It's like, well, how many front ends are online? It has all of those because they're all in HTML. And so it's great at those things and it does snap to something that feels natural. But again, is it because it's understood it? And it has my same, kind of my same preferences, or is it because other people have my same preferences and it's been trained a lot on those? But
yeah,
man, coding something novel is absolutely great, and I can see why that's driving most of the revenue. I don't feel that these are in the same place yet, but they're incredible. They're so nice. They're so
yeah,
good.
they
It
are.
just doesn't have that same value in my day to day life yet.
Well, and the other challenge is most of us, me definitely, just don't have the vocabulary, don't have the visual vocabulary to articulate
Uh-huh.
precisely what I need. Never mind the taste or the creativity. Communicating or creating visuals and imagery when a stepping stone to doing that is actually articulating it in plain English is pretty alien for many of us, right? If I'm an artist, I don't describe what I'm going to do, I just go do it, right? So it doesn't go through that part of my brain. And so I don't think we have I don't think many of us have that language yet.
Yeah, and I do want to continue to play with ImageGen or images too, because going in and modifying, like maybe taking like a notebook LM image, slap the image to, no, change this, and this. I mean, I can imagine workflows that would make me faster, but I just made a pretty in-depth. I spent a whole weekend, a couple weekends ago, making a proposal for a client, and I used notebook LM heavily to kind of inspire me. But in the end, I think I probably stripped almost everything out by the time I was done. It had inspired me, has set a direction. It looked pretty good at the end compared to how my normal decks do, but it's an accelerant. It removes the blockers to getting started, like you said, but it just isn't something that I can give any kind of complex activity to without a whole bunch of, it almost ends up as much work, but it's just, it
Yeah.
looks good and it gets me going versus, man, do I really want to sit down and create a deck from scratch? So yeah,
Yeah.
the image gen stuff isn't yet there yet, but this is a big advancement.
There you go. Anything of interest that came across your desk or any other
Well,
topic?
yes, I'm actually, I believe, have used Mythos
Uh-oh. Tell us
today.
more.
Well, there are a few new features if you have been using Claude Code and you're on one of the plans. They're screwing with their plan names, but I'm on one of the higher level max plans. And there's something called Ultra Plan, and now they released Ultra Review. And I had heard that Ultra Plan was a Mythos thing, and it's, you can see why. They have a very strong control. You can't just prompt, "Hey, do this, and this. I want to get this result," because you could do crime, right? If you gave access to Mythos, that's their whole branding. But if you say review my code, then it's going to have a very constrained set of things and a very particular way of interfacing. And so Ultra Review is rumored to be Mythos, and so I ultra reviewed a bunch of vibe coded slop that I put together, and it said, "I'm gonna make some changes," and I'm like, I don't know what they are, man. Good luck." And so maybe it'll be more safe or something, but I do believe my code base has been touched by Mythos.
And did it come back with anything scary? What was the
Let me see.
the
Let's
want
go
of a
to my
better
ultra
phrasing?
review. What did it say? 6 findings. No, I mean, it's just words. I mean, at this point, like, I don't know what these words mean, man. It's
You want
like,
pictures, huh?
yeah, this is someone. Let's, if you're vibe coding, you get so detached from like, what are the names of the functions? What are the concepts?
I have one thing. I don't have a lot of commentary on, but it's just an observation. You alluded to it. Anthropic are rejiggering their pricing, and the big piece that I saw, and I need to double check, is they moved Claude Code out of like the $20 a month plan into the 100. And so I've seen a couple of notes from various people at Anthropic, and the gist of the change is, hey guys, when we put the pricing together, these things didn't exist. And we're giving a bunch of this stuff to enterprises, and not said, but alluded to, we're losing money on this.
Yeah,
So it's going to be, it's the sort of the cost structure of this stuff is going to be interesting over the next 6 to
they're gonna
12
have a
months.
very easy time. I know that the way that we are using Claude, internally is not sustainable in the sense that it's gonna go up. And, just remember what it was like back in San Francisco in, like, 2015 or so. Maybe that summer of 2016 was just magic. You had Pokemon Go and, like, $3 Ubers, and, Obama was still president. It was yeah, I
Yeah.
just for anyone who hasn't lived in 2016 in San Francisco, it really did. Everyone was optimistic. All your startups worked. It was great. It was a great
Yeah.
time. Anyway, yeah. Then they raised the price on Uber quite a bit. Like, I'm now paying $80 for an Uber now, and it's just like,
Yeah.
what happened? We used to be cool. We used to be $3, and I think $200 a month is going to feel real cheap for state of the art in about a year.
It's even a little bit worse than that. What we've just seen is we're shifting from a fixed flat fee to a variable.
Yeah.
That's a real issue when you're the CFO and you can't control how many tokens your engineer uses.
Yeah,
By the
and
way, you
and
tell the
so
whole company to use it as well. So that's going to be super interesting.
yeah, I mean, like, Meta is famously token maxing, where they're telling them, just we're going to actually judge you, and the more tokens, the better.
Yeah.
Nobody's really figured out how to use AI in a way where it's good enough. I mean, my general rule of thumb is, okay, well, I'm paying $100 a month for this or $200 a month for this, and I pay you a lot more as an employee. I want to see you use the best, biggest model as much as possible, because the possibility that the better model would reduce your workload 10%. Well, I know how much you make, and 10% is a hell of a lot of money compared to $200. And so I want you to use the heaviest model. I want you to use as much of it as possible, because even if I paid $2,000 a month and I had a 20 or 30% savings in your wages, look at someone making
Yeah.
$300,000 at Google or Meta, that comes out way ahead. And then as soon as we recognize that that can be done by AI, then maybe, the cost of AI inference has actually been falling pretty quickly. And so, what you're doing now might be cheaper. And if you find a good enough AI solution to solve it, and then the cost comes down, well, now it's a permanent savings. And so you've used your employee to permanently replace themselves. And so I think that's the notion behind token maxing. But
Yeah. It's
I
going
also
to
think
be,
it's really subsidized.
it makes sense, but this consumption based pricing is it's going to be an interesting headwind, both for using AI to build something, and then using AI to operate something. So no longer can you, or maybe no longer, this is a bit too extreme, but it's going to be more challenging to offer your customer a flat fixed price for your product if you're paying a variable component on tokens to do something on
Well,
an
I mean,
ongoing basis.
that's the whole game, though. It's like, if
Yeah.
you have a better control of the value you get from tokens and the type of tokens that you spend on various tasks, your client cannot match what you're doing.
Okay, Matt, the second half of the year is going to be interesting. Let's wrap it there and we'll chat next week.
See you next time.
All right. Bye now.